Well, hello everyone. I hope everyone has grabbed a sandwich. Welcome to our college tour with Marlies Rohmer and Fatima, who will sort of present it today. Yeah, enjoy. I'll give the word to Fatima now.
Hi everyone. Welcome.
Is it working, Fatima?
Yeah, am I?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh. Like this. Yeah. Okay. So this will be an interactive talk. We're gonna talk about starting your own firm and how Marlies Rohmer, her experiences about it. So if you have questions or if you want to share your own experiences, please don't hesitate to raise your hand. And there's someone walking with a microphone and they will come to you and you can have some input into the conversation. If you don't want to do it publicly, you can also go to Mentimeter and ask your questions there, and they will appear on the tablet, and I will ask them for you. So yeah, welcome Marlies.
Hi, thank you for inviting me.
It's super good to have you here. I think you have a lot of experience about, because we have talked before, and I think it's super interesting to hear your side on to hear your experiences on starting a firm and how that went for you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you've also studied here, not at this faculty, at the...
At the Mekelweg.
Yeah.
But this building is better, I suppose.
I think so too, yeah. I don't know, it's
Can you understand me though? Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, can you tell us more about after you've graduated, how your career began?
Yeah, after I left Delft University Architecture, I did a kind of practical period, a stage at OMA, Rem Koolhaas. And at that time, there were just 5 people working there, 5 men actually. And I thought it was absolutely fantastic to work there. And altogether, I was supposed to work at night and 7 days a week. So I did for a long time, months and months. And then once upon a time, there was a kind of sailing weekend with friends, and I was, well, they forbid me actually to go there. They thought they had that I had to work there. I didn't do that, so I went sailing, and I came nicely brown and red back in the office, and then we were working on drawings tables at that time, so no computers. And then the lineals were cut off my drawing table. So that was an indirect message that I could probably better leave. And I walked to Rem and I said, what's happening here? How can you do this? And he said, yeah, it's Jan Voorberg. He is my chef de bureau. And it's probably better. We are not a 9-to-5 office. I said, no, I know, but this is the other way around. Well, anyhow, I started my own office after it. I left and I thought, because I thought it was rather difficult to work for Rem, because I was thinking all the time, what should he want me to do? So we were working at the Nederlands Danstheater and very interesting commissions, Eiplein. But I was in a kind of mental crisis all the time, and I was always thinking, what does he want me to do? And I thought, well, I can't leave for a weekend and all together with this aspect, I start my own office. But then it was absolutely crisis. So it was in the 80s, 40 years ago, and it was crisis and nothing built. And I thought, well, then I make a home office. So I started with another girl from architecture. We started our own office. And of course, nobody was phoning and nothing happened. So it was rather difficult to start the office. So I took the yellow pages and I started at the A of ABN AMRO, and I worked the whole alphabet and phoned everybody, every bank director. Hey, hello, I'm Marlies Rohmer. Sorry I'm disturbing you. Sorry that I exist. But can I show you my final study plans? And then they thought, well, this is rather odd. But then always in the end they said, oh yes, of course, you can come half an hour or so. So I saw at that manner, I saw a lot of new commissioners, and they all gave me something. Like ABN AMRO said, well, we have some bank buildings in Brazil. Of course, you're not allowed to travel there, but you can all design them because we need someone. And I was very good in sketching, so I did a lot of sketching for ING real estate. So that was the reason, or that was the way I started my own office, by phoning everybody.
Do you think that would work at this day and age to just phone people and see if they're impressed with your work?
I don't know if they were impressed, but they thought this is someone who wants something. But
someone who's
for now, in
persisting.
this period, you mean, for the people who are sitting here.
Yeah.
I mean, at that time I started my own office, and when there was a new commissioner, of course no one was phoning, so I asked my mom, can you phone all the time? So it seems like there is a kind of phone traffic and it's a kind of busy thing in the office. Actually we cheated a little bit, but I did it all alone because that girl, she wanted to do other things and so, but I started my own office, and I got more and more people employed, and in the end there were 45 people, but I did everything at myself. And in that time, building was complex, but not that complex as it is now, because at that time we were on a meeting table, a conference table with 5 people, and you made a whole building, more or less. You guided the constructor and the contractor, and we did everything ourselves. But now, when you're on a conference table, it's with 20 people or more. So the whole building situation is much more complex. So what I think for you would be good is that we make a kind of Tinder, a kind of dating site here on Bouwkunde. Because when you start your own office now, it's better not to do it the way I did it, because I didn't get a burnout, but in a way I worked day and night. But to have a group, because it would be good on this Tinder app on Bouwkunde to find a very good architect or two, an urban planner, a process manager, someone who's just interested in sustainability.
So you don't have to do it alone, actually.
Yeah, and you have a very wide knowledge. So someone who is just like to do research. So then you have a group of more or less 10 people, and that would, I think, for now, for you, it would be a rather good idea. Also, because I don't know how you think about it. But I see people doubting about, shall I be an architect and am I good enough, or shall I be a technical engineer or whatever. But then you can think a little bit in this group what suits you the most. If you want to get new commissions, if you're very good and out in the open, if you can gather, if you can do the acquisition, or that you're more focused on people management, like human resource,
yeah, is there,
things like that.
has there anyone here thought about starting their own firm after they graduated? Is it something, yeah? And do you think, is it something you just thought, oh, it would be fun, but I don't know if it would happen? Or is it something you think is really plausible? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm thinking that first maybe I would like to gain a bit more experience in practice, but like after 5 or something years, that eventually I would like to start my own firm, yeah.
And would you like to do that alone, or what Marlies said, with like a community, or?
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe with a friend or with like a small group of people that I already know, who I can work also together with. I think that will be nice. I think when you don't really know each other well in advance, I think maybe it can be a bit more difficult to really work together, maybe. So.
And how would you choose the people you want to like be partners with?
I think maybe when starting working, I think some people you have a similar way of thinking or similar vision in terms of design. I think that's like my idea of how it would start. Yeah.
So you would like to work with maybe one friend?
Yep.
So the two of you, and would you choose this friend as a totally different character and different skills, or more or less the same as you and the same skills and the same way of thinking about architecture?
I think definitely the skills, they should be not exactly the same, because you end up with 2 of the same persons. But like in terms of way of thinking, I think they should be like a similar kind of way of thinking with that kind of person, and also a similar way of working, maybe.
Because there are lots of different aspects to running a firm, right? You have to do the financial side, the management of the people, but also more the hardcore designing and stuff.
That's the thing. Right now, it's a lot about tenders, so you have to do competitions. And these competitions, they're so broad. You're really with sometimes 20, 25 people in a group working on it. And as an office, it's really difficult at the moment to get all these people employed, unless you are a huge office. But when you start your own office, and you have a group and different disciplines in this group, of course, someone doesn't fit in and he or she can leave. It doesn't matter, actually. But I think the world is much more complex because of this tender culture, there are a lot of problems on this tender culture, but we don't discuss that today. But as long as they're there, it's really difficult. I know a lot of very good architects, young offices, they are the best designers ever. But they don't succeed in getting slightly bigger commissions all the time. Because commissioners, at the time I started, it was then the 90s. And the 90s, everything was possible. And there was a lot of experimental things going on. And young people got commissions without tendering, no tender culture. And now it's all about commissioners are are a bit more, they're not so experimental anymore. So it really should be good. And they want to know you will succeed in making a good building.
They're playing it safe, kind of.
Yeah, they play on safe. And I think when you're in a group, so not two of you, but more, you're in a group, you can work like hell because you're all equal. And when you're young, I mean, you need something to eat. But actually, I worked the first years of my life for 2 gulden 50 to florin 50 an hour. I made so many hours, I could survive. And I think for your generation, it's really a good idea to make a collective. It's because it's actually the only way how you can manage to answer these complex questions.
Yeah, to manage the firm, but also do the tenders and not get a burnout, basically.
Yeah. And then there's always someone who is very good in human resources and talks to people employed. Because in my time, I employed 45 people alone. I worked day and night. I got 2 hernias, that's a back problem. I was transported laying in a car. I was laying on a conference table at that time because my back was extremely hurtful. And I went on and on and on because I liked this profession, but it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And
why do you think that happens? That you get, it's your own firm, so you care a lot about it, and you kind of get this mindset of I have to be everywhere and I have to do everything when you're managing it alone, right?
Exactly that.
Yeah. And you think that would happen less if you had partners?
Yeah, and you are in a group.
Yeah.
And you start with a group.
Mm-hmm.
I think I see nice young offices who start in small groups and with different disciplines, and I think that's really the way to do it now. Of course, you can do it any way you want to, but it will help you to have a lot of knowledge in the office.
Yeah, there's a question about do you think the current culture hinders people from starting their own firm?
Sorry, can you repeat it?
Whether the current tender culture prevents people from starting their own firms?
Yeah, I think so, because it's so difficult winning tenders. I used to be an expert in schools, but to win a school, it's you have to have built, I think, 3 schools the last 3 years, which is ridiculous, because I think it's better to show a school which is 10 years old and still survives and is sustainable enough.
Yeah.
I wrote this book, What Happened to My Buildings. I try to look at my own older work, if it's sustainable enough, how does it work, and things. So it's a, but anyhow, you have to work that way at the moment. So you need a lot of knowledge to answer.
Yeah, but I think it's also nonsensical that you have to have previous knowledge on schools to design a new school? Like, where does that cycle begin?
No, of course not.
Yeah.
You don't have to have that knowledge because you have a very good education here. I thought when I quit bouwkunde here, I thought, oh, I'm worthless. I don't know anything. But that's not true. I found out I know where to search. So I knew a lot in the end. And I always asked people of very good offices at night, in the evening at my office, and they teach me to detail. So I draw details myself, and then they had a red pencil, and they said, no, you should do it like this, or you should do it like that. And so I learned all these things. And I am helping all kinds of young officers at the moment to get a school. So you can ask everybody to help you. So that's also a tip I can really give. So phone any well-known office, ask for a very good project leader and say, I'm a starting office, and can you help me in the evening? So they always want to come for 2 hours.
To also build up a network with external parties.
Or learn new detailing, good details. Learn new acquisition. Because a lot of good designers see a little bit like this, so they're drawing and they're sublime, they are perfect, but they are not able to do the acquisition. Do you know what acquisition is? Get new commissions. There are very little people who are a good designer and also good in that. For example, my parents, they were doctors. And it was absolutely not the idea to talk about money at home. I mean, it was sort of there, not that much, but so in the beginning I was very shy to talk to a new commissioner about, hey, how can I buy all these clothes when you don't pay me? So it was difficult to get this, onderhandelingen.
Yeah.
So
you
I
were...
learned that. I went to het MKB, midden- en kleinbedrijf, and I did a course. And I had to act, and I had to improve myself in it. So, but when you're in a group, there's always someone who's very good in it.
Yeah, and you don't have to work your bone off to manage everything, kind of.
Yeah.
Because there's also a question about what you meant with the collective Tinder profiling. Like, why do you think that? Is it to find other people to start a firm with? So people who do more of the people managing inside the firm, and people who do the acquisition and more the designing.
Yeah, and to work as a group at these standards, because these standards, they are very wide. So you have to write all kinds of text about how the firm is working, about how you doing the whole process things.
Yeah.
But as one architect, you can't have all this knowledge.
Yeah.
Is that a good answer on the question? Because is it from someone?
I think so. What did you think? Because another question of mine: what would you have? What would have helped you if you had a partner with you? What kind of partner would have helped you with your firm, you think?
A managing partner, a partner for human resource, because there was always someone crying in the office about a grandma dying or someone else, problems. And of course, I really wanted to talk to them all, but I was totally fascinated by the design. And the fault I made is that I I worked so hard and tried to do everything all at once. And I couldn't succeed, of course, because you have to sit quietly with the person and say, hey, maybe it's good that you work half days. And no, I said, you have to work till 7 o'clock in the evening because we have to finish this. And then when you have a broader team, you have a better work culture, I think.
Yeah.
So I didn't do that so well. I wasn't so good in it because I was totally focused on. In the 90s, we got so big chances. We every day someone phoned for a new commission.
Yeah.
So I was totally fascinated about designing, and if I was sick or not, unhealthy or not, I worked.
Yeah. We were talking about the way people at OMA behaved when you were working there. How do you think the work culture in your own firm was when you look back at it?
I think I see two aspects.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I gave no matter who took a chance, I gave people enormous chances. When people were young and enthusiastic, I said, okay, this is your project, you never did it, do it. Go to the commissioner. I didn't like doing meetings all the time. So I let them go sky high. But I also expected a lot of them. So people who could handle that was okay. But of course there were people, and they were in a, everybody has it, in a psychological crisis or things like that. And I really wasn't, I'm ashamed of myself. Not so many people, but some people that I chased them a little bit, like, ja, we hebben allemaal wel eens een griepje. So everybody is ill at the time, but that's no reason not coming to work, which is, of course, ridiculous. But I was that way.
Yeah.
And it's also, when you want to work on an office, you will probably think, on what kind of office shall I work? I would suggest, when you want to learn things, of course you can work on a very small, really designing office with very beautiful work, but then you have to work really, really hard, I guess. And when you work in a bigger office, there is more, they will more focus on your well-being. On the other hand, then there are really big commissions, and you can work for 5 till 10 years on one commission. And you probably don't want to do that either. So it's a bit searching for...
Yeah. Maybe that's a good question for anyone who wants to answer it. What do you think would be a good work environment for you, or what kind of chances would you like to get from a firm? Is there someone who wants to answer that question?
Do you have other questions or remarks or...
Yeah, okay. I actually did an internship last semester at a pretty big firm, and I thought I would really like that. And I liked the fact that once the clock hit 5:30, it was like, okay, bye. But at the same time, I did miss sometimes having the focus on a project because it's so big and there's so many projects. So I think I'm still finding a balance personally in between just a good life-work balance, but also I can imagine really getting sucked into all the work. So I think it's a matter of, yeah, just kind of messing up, I feel like, kind of learning from your mistakes. But I can imagine that those really long work days also not very good. But I had a follow-up question. Do you think that your firm would have still been as successful as it is now if you hadn't had that very strict work mentality? Or would it, do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, I do understand
Yeah.
what you say. I'm thinking. you always take yourself. And I was really an architecture idiot. I was just thinking and dreaming about architecture, and I wanted to win the Pritzker Prize and all kinds of dreams, and better than Rem Koolhaas. And I mean, I had all kinds of ideas. And I think I didn't see my failures. So I wasn't able to make a better team. Like, I had a lot of very, very good employees, and they're fantastic, and I still see them almost all. But what I didn't do well is that I analyzed myself. So what am I good in, and what's failing? And a lot of things I wasn't that good in. I got really angry also at commissioners at that time when they didn't, when they went another direction and so, and I was kind of overworked all the time, but still I was working on 40 buildings simultaneously, and that was my drive. But I think when I had been able to work with a group and make them all partner, then I think it would have been much better for the office and in the end for the architecture, yes.
How did that happen, that you got so obsessed with designing? Because I know you wanted to be a vet, actually.
Yeah.
How come that your mindset's like 180'd?
Yeah, it's amazing. I wanted to be a vet, an animal doctor. And wat is uitgeloot zijn?
You were not selected for the...
I was not selected for 3 years, and then accidentally I saw I had some friends from primary school, and I went there for dinner, and they said, well, I have to go to the faculty of architecture, I have to pick something up. And then I went with him, and I saw the modeling room, and I thought, oh my God, that this exists. And I straight away I tried to apply for architecture, and so I was an architect suddenly. I didn't know anything about it, but I got totally obsessed with it. And I see a lot of architects; they are kind of obsessed.
Yeah.
But there are very few architects who have a lot of disciplines in one person. I didn't have that.
What do you mean exactly?
Well, like I was a good technician. I was a good acquisiteur. I was a good architect, but I wasn't that good in people managing, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And then things.
Yeah, because being an architect or a firm owner isn't only about designing. It's actually
It's very wide, and now it's even much wider.
Yeah.
Because when I see how many advisors we have doing tenders, things I used to do myself in the early days, I'm not able to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So we have advisors in all directions, but they are very expensive, and that's the reason I've been thinking for young people, how can they start this office? How can they do it? When you're young, it's really the moment, because when you work in an office for 10 years first and think, I have to get more knowledge, I don't know if that's true, but maybe you think that, but then you are 35 and then you have more needs, because you think, I need a car, I need a house, I need everything.
Anything, yeah.
But when I started, I didn't need anything except some food.
Yeah.
And that was nice, because I didn't earn that much in the beginning.
Yeah, and if you're also working with more people, you become less obsessed with...
Yeah,
your firm?
Because there's always someone who says, hey,
Take it
what are
easy.
you up to?
Yeah. There was also a question about your time at OMA. It is
I
how
think it's a very good office, OMA, so that's not about that. Yeah.
it's about whether the pressure, whether you think the pressure was evenly spread between men and women
I was the only woman.
employees. Oh, okay. Then
There
it's
were
answered
5
quickly.
men and me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And how do you think it is now in the whole
When I
architectural
studied,
field?
there were very little women, and they all disappeared somewhere. Now there are a lot of women, which I love that's going on at the moment. But for me, doing this profession as a woman, it had two sides. Like, I had a lot of advantages by it because there was a time like, oh yes, we also need a woman. So, and then there were very little, so then they took me every time. So I got a lot of chances. But on the other hand, what I found very difficult all that time, because I run this office alone, and of course there were problems to solve, and I wasn't a little pussy kitten all the time, but I also was kind of severe, and I had to knock on the table, hey, that's the way we're going. And I noticed that a lot of men had problems on that behavior. So there was once a tender, and some developers were mailing if they should take me, and accidentally they put me in the BCC, so I could see their mail, and they wrote like, yeah, she's not a pussy kitten, schootpoes. I'm sure that she can win the commission for us, but you have to steer her a little bit, and you have to keep her. Yeah, you have to you have to steer her. So she has a bit.
She's too feisty.
and a lot of other things, and they would never say that about a man. And I, of course, we saw the email.
Yeah.
And then my process manager, she is also a cabaretier, and she wrote a song about it with the guitar. And then they were very anxious that it was a typical Me Too mail with all these big developers in it. So when I had been putting it in the paper, it was a kind of scandal thing, of course. I didn't do that, but we sent them the song. And, well, I won the commission for them. But it's more as an example. For me, there was always a mixture between behaving like... I tried to behave as a man all the time, because I had to solve all kinds of problems, and I wanted to do that, and I wanted to show the direction we're going in, and a lot of commissioners and also project managers, they didn't accept that. So for me, those were hard times, so now and then.
Yeah, it's. I can imagine it felt very, I don't know, very as a double-edged sword, because it was a field that was dominated by men, so you were maybe subconsciously showing the same behavior, but at the same time there was a lot of sexism where people didn't accept a woman to behave the same way.
Yeah, or to dominate.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And I think when you're in a group, there's always someone who is good in it.
Yeah.
You can.
Do you think it's the same now? Because
Things changes. It's better a question for the public maybe, but it's also to have children and do this profession. I have one daughter, and I was a single mom at that time, so I had to organize an office with 45 people and have a daughter, and so I had a kind of a woman in the house, and she did everything for me, cooking and washing and things. And in the end, my daughter called her mama. So that was also I didn't mind, because I thought they are very good together. But I think in my career it costed me a lot of effort to make these buildings. Yeah.
yeah. And how do you look back on it? Do you think it was worth it?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I would have done it differently, but it's worth it. Yeah.
How would you have done it differently?
Yeah, more like a wider team group.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I couldn't do everything myself. The advantage was that I could design everything myself, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. But you wouldn't recommend to try to manage everything on your own?
No.
No.
No, and especially in this time, not anymore.
Yeah.
But of course, there are many ways to roam. So, yeah.
Just, yeah, if you...
Analyze your own person. What are you good in and what are you less good in? And
yeah, I think...
I think that's really a thing to know first before you're doing something, because fighting all the time in something you're not that good in, that's rather tiring.
Yeah, before you mentioned you didn't really evaluate your own mistakes when you were, on a roll. And I think that's also why it's important to sometimes just take a step back and just stop for a moment and not always keep on the move and always try to achieve everything or something.
Yeah. Yeah, so there was this crisis and there was less work, and then I bought this van and I visited all my old work and looked at it. So what went wrong, what was very good, and I wrote a book about it. Mm-hmm. And I got a lot of new work out of that book. That was amazing.
Oh, okay.
Although they were my failures. People liked it, that I analyzed my own, were improvement.
Yeah, what was the overall conclusion you got from the book? What was the overall conclusion from your book, from what happened to your buildings? Or is that like a spoiler?
There wasn't an overall conclusion, but a lot of my experimental work in the 90s, it didn't survive. Like, when I was here in school, I liked Herzberger a lot and I liked brickwork a lot, but brickwork was a kind of scheldwoord. You were not allowed to use brickwork because it was supposed to be a very old-fashioned material. And I liked it all the time, and I made a lot of buildings in brickwork patterns. So my brickwork buildings, they all survived everything. So they polluted even more beautiful in the years, and also after 25 years they were getting better and better. But there were a lot of materials, experimental materials, like wooden facades, they had to to be redone after 10 years or so. And I made also for families, I made a housing project, for example, with very small apartments. People didn't have that much money. And then I made huge glass windows. So, but they had very little space. So they were in a kind of, it was architectonical beautiful, but it was, they lived in a kind of vitrine. So they thought,
Like an exposition.
what's going yeah, so they all went to the Gamma and they bought some rolluiken and they put these screens for the beautiful facade. And yeah, I also learned to look very good to who are you building for actually. Yeah. And so I learned a lot of things from that project.
Do we have time for a question, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there any? Oh, I see a question.
Yeah, I had a question. You expressed the advice to assemble a diverse group, and I was wondering, as a director of a firm and someone who is in the position to assemble such a group, what is something that you look for when you hire new architects for the office?
I look for different persons all the time, persons with different skills, not for... and sometimes someone's coming in the office and I think, hey, this is a very nice and good person. I find some work for this person because we need to employ this person. So I'm not predestinated about what kind of people I should hire, actually. I like people who are all round, because then they can do different kinds of things and they can go to commissioners, and it's also good, I think, not to be that have too much hierarchy. So, yeah, is that an answer to your question, or?
We have another question.
I have a question. Before you were advising that you should, when you're building a team to perhaps start a new firm, that you should look for a different kind of skill set with all these people. Would you suggest that you might even venture out of the architecture faculty and perhaps look for people who have a lot more experience with people contact or HR or even just business strategies? Or would you think that that is a bit too risky or not that useful?
No, you could do that.
Yeah?
That way, yeah.
Would you maybe, looking back, were there times when you wish you would have had somebody who wasn't completely in the architecture world? Or do you think that for your own firm it was fine the way it was?
No, I had a lot of people not from the architecture world. Like, I had a psychologue, een psycholoog, a psychologue?
Like an office psychologist.
In the office.
Yeah.
And she was doing the human resource in the end.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
So I think it's also, in America, there are studies with all kinds of disciplines together. So I think that's really interesting. And I think it's also interesting to make a kind of dating site after your master's to design a good group, because how could you make such a program that you can bring people together and that you can start together? I think a lot of commissioners are very interested in these kind of groups, because they're also looking for renewment, and yeah, I think the different disciplines could be interesting as well. For sure.
You said you needed to behave more like men. How can we make the work environment more suited so that women don't need to behave like men? How can we do that?
Can you talk a bit louder?
Okay. So yeah, you said that you needed to behave more like men. How can we make the work environment so that women don't need to behave like men and they can like they don't need to behave like men? How can we do that?
Yeah, so it's not that, you don't have to behave more masculine to be taken seriously, kind of.
Yeah, it's not good to do that. But I had to do everything alone as a head of the whole office. And it was also a kind of panicking, like I was panicking all the time about all the commissions. So it would be much better, again, that I had a wider team, like, all partner, and that we could divide the roles a little bit. So I was the all-in-one show, and that was rather difficult. Of course, I learned a lot about it, but what I think is very interesting, like MVRDV, they started with 3 partners, and they have different skills, and they have a lot of people on the top, and I really admire the way how they run this office.
Is it more woman-friendly then? You meant by that?
Sorry?
Is it more woman-friendly how they run their office?
Yeah, I think so.
And what do they do to make that happen?
Of course, I was also friendly, so now and then.
Yeah. Okay. But what did MVDV do, or how can you make a firm so that women don't need to behave like men? So, maybe it's very difficult.
They work more playful in a group, and because they work more playful in a group, I think the whole office was more playful, and people like that. Commissioners like that. They like, of course. So the only thing is that I want to advise you not to do everything alone, because it's, for me it wasn't good, but now in these times it's not good anyhow. That's my idea, but.
Yes, thanks.
There was one question there, and one specific question on the iPad, and then we're gonna stop, I think.
I'm wondering, when you're saying that people have different disciplines, and for a lot of us, we study architecture for bachelor's, and for master's, we switch to probably landscape architecture, urbanism, and my colleagues here, we're studying urbanism right now. So when you run a collaborative office, you're probably trained as an architect and an urbanist after the degree. And how do you then maintain a division of roles? Because probably after studying urbanism for masters, I realized I want to be an urbanist, but at the back of my head, I am also an architect.
Yeah.
But yeah.
When you start as an architect and you end as an urbanist. I mean, I studied architecture, and I do a lot of urban work at the moment. And when you're in a group, you can easily change because you're studying now, and you have to choose a direction, like landscape or whatever. That's difficult because you choose between you actually don't want to choose. But I think when you have a wide group, then you can try to find out what's the best for you. And of course, you can be self-made. You can start as an architect and go on as an urbanist or a landscape. Adriaan Geuze, I think he did do Boskoop, and in the end he was one of the best landscape architects. And his school was totally different. So that's interesting when you're in a group, because you can try to find out. because it's your own business.
And then there was one very specific question about how can we increase the financial rewards of architects?
How can we?
Increase the financial rewards of architects.
The financial rewards?
Rewards. So I think when you win a tender, right? Or from who was this question? I'm not sure. Anyway. Okay, I think this...
I want to answer the question, but I don't understand it so.
Yeah, I think they mean if you start a firm or something, how can you...
Startkapital?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I didn't have any starting finances when I started my own office. I did not earn that much in the beginning, and I did do a lot of sketching for big developers, and that was the way I earned money. And then I could do a lot of competitions of that money. So I had other jobs in the direction of architecture. Related to architecture, but I was 25 then, and I didn't need that much money because I didn't mind not to buy new clothes or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to know because
I was 40 when I bought my first home, for example. I wasn't thinking about these kinds of things.
Yeah, most of the times it's like, oh, I want to start my own architecture, but it's no one really talks about.
You don't need that much money. You need a computer, and you And you can also work temporarily for other architects as a freelancer.
Yeah. And then what you said, if you win tenders and stuff, it kind of comes naturally. The money to expand your firm.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there something else?
I think, sadly, this is everything we have time for.
Okay.
I want to thank Marlies. I myself found it very interesting. I hope everyone did. And thank you, Fatima, for presenting this. And just a quick reminder, this afternoon we have the portfolio workshop by Paul de Ruiter in the Bouwpub. So everyone who has signed up has received an email with the shift they can come by to let Paul de Ruiter check their portfolio. But if you haven't started your portfolio yet, or you just have some questions, at 2, there will also be a very short lecture, about half an hour, by Paul de Ruiter about how to start your portfolio, what a portfolio is, and why it is important to have one. You can also just come by the Bouwpub the entire afternoon to ask any questions you have. We have some students there who have a portfolio and can answer any questions about how to start. And you can also look through some portfolios from students and from Paul de Ruiter. They brought some as well. So yeah, I hope to see you all this afternoon, and I really hope you enjoyed this lecture as much as I did. Thank you for coming.